Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and tonight I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm a little sad. They came out with a new Viking show, and it's like set like 125 years forward from the last one,
Okay.
and I'm almost done it. So
Well, that is that's one of the things that every once in a while, like, oh, there's a show I'm watching.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh,
And there's a lot
I'm
of cool
all
shields in there, and the way they fight is pretty cool. But I guess one of the things I read is Vikings did not actually use shield walls. That part is made up.
okay.
If I read was accurate.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anywhere where Vikings did a shield wall. It was more of like a
If you
Roman
watch the
style.
Viking show, they do it all the time.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it looks cool, and it kind of makes sense when people are shooting you with arrows. Um, but
I
historically, I
watched
don't believe it was accurate.
I watched a number of seasons of Vikings,
uh,
but that was years ago, and I only have bits and pieces of the story. There's characters that I liked and didn't like,
yeah,
uh, and it's been thrown out there of like, oh, we should go back and watch the end. And I'm like, do you know how much I've forgotten over the
yeah,
years since we stopped watching?
yeah. So we started watching late, right? So when we
Mhm.
started watching it, like we were getting, everything was almost out, right? Like I think we only had to wait for like a season or so.
Okay,
So we just kind of watched it all the way up until like I guess it's kind of easy to lose momentum, right? Otherwise, I think.
sure, sure.
I mean, you were just talking about the Flash, right? Like I totally gave up on all those shows because of the way they do the crossovers.
Yes,
Uh,
and I wound up having that issue myself, and I decided I was going to push through. Was not going to watch the Legends of Tomorrow or whatever that was called,
uh,
but the other ones, I'm like, all right, if there's a crossover episode, I just skip it, because I watch them. I don't watch them in the same order.
yeah,
I
yeah.
binge seasons.
They have to understand that it goes on a streaming service, and we watch them in order. Darn it, we're not watching your shows when they come out. Nobody is watching your shows when they come out. There's like five boomers in the world that are doing that. Okay, that's it.
So I finished up, Supergirl and Arrow. Just finished up Flash. So that pretty much covers that whole era.
Yeah.
Uh, and now the question is, do I go check out any of these other shows? So
Yeah, so it's funny because like the last one of these we did about swords. So I was like, oh, like there's a ton of like swords that came to mind that are like iconic, right?
mhm.
And then when it comes to shields, I can think of one, maybe two. It's like
Caps.
there's Captain America's shield, right? And whatever Captain America knockoff you want to think of.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
and then there's like maybe and really only because I did the swords that I would maybe even think of that, and that is the claw shield that Lion-O used.
Okay.
But like that's it. I did a quick search, a quick Google search, and there's things that come up, but I'm not familiar with any of them. The Aegis Shield from Final Fantasy, something you might know about.
Right.
There's one for Dark Souls and Skyrim. Like I didn't play any of these games. They kind of like bring up Wonder Woman's shield, and yeah, like she uses the shield, but I don't think her shield doesn't feel iconic to me because like she's awesome whether she has the shield or not, right? Captain
Iconic
America
for
like is kind of like a prop for the shield almost.
well, Cap is awesome with or without the shield. Wonder Woman is awesome with or without the shield. But when I think iconic for Wonder Woman, the first thing that's my go-to is the lasso or
Yeah,
or the bracers more than a shield.
yeah.
So
I mean,
um
there's definitely the Amazon warrior part, and a lot of that comes up.
sure.
But like to me, it's like it could be any shield, or it could be, any sword,
Right.
in her hands. But with Captain America, it's all about like that very specific item.
Yes.
So
So when I looked at shields, I threw this topic out as a talking point because You've got the classic mirror, sword and shield. It is the staple of warfare.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, I missed the talk on shield or on swords, and I imagine there's a number of fans out there who probably would not want to hear me ramble again about my love of swords and what have you. So I'll get into that aspect, in my newsletter. But when it comes to shields, like D&D and typical fantasy role playing games really don't treat shields the way that any real fighting style does. Like they really should be more of a cover, more of a damage reduction, and an AC bonus kind of thing all at once. Because legitimately, it is more than just, oh, I'm wearing armor. Like these, it's meant to literally deflect and shrug off attacks much more so than, oh, I got out of the way.
Well, according to D&D Beyond, they don't give a lot of love to shields either. There's like 14 entries.
Wow.
And 3 of them are +1, +2, +3.
I dig shields, and I think a lot of people when they get into a game, like a build, if you will, unless you're going with a high AC kind of scenario, it's like, I'll toss the shield away and I'll fight with 2 weapons, or I'll fight with a big weapon so that you can deal so much more damage. But when you begin looking at, oh, well, I've got a +2, or I've got a large shield that's a +3 scenario, like, holy crap, that's a huge bump to an armor class. So, like, shields can do an awful lot for you, let alone the shield spell.
Harambe says tower shields are iconic, right? And I'm like, the only thing that annoys me more than a tower shield in a D&D game is probably a character dual wielding rapiers.
Now, I've seen, and it's probably movie footage, it is possible to fight with 2 rapiers, but not against one person.
I don't know what it is in my brain that just sees that and annoys me.
It's weird. A rapier is a fencer's weapon, and it is meant for a back and forth scenario. You can't do this and fight with a rapier. That's not how that works.
I mean, usually, even when you fight with 2 weapons, right? Like usually, one is primarily used to block with, and deflect, less so than attack. I mean, you can switch it up, and you have the versatility,
right?
And also I could see like I said, I'm watching a lot of Vikings, so you see a lot of times they're wielding multiple axes or a sword and an axe, and I think the really useful thing about the axe is you can hook with it. You can hook their shield and pull it down, and then try and stab them in the face over top of their shield.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the fighting style that they're known for. Is like, okay, well, a shield is incredibly useful until you realize that warfare is always the ever-changing scenario, and I can design a weapon that counters your defense in exactly that way.
Wait, I'm wrong. I've been corrected. So someone has annoyed me far more than double rapier.
Oh yeah, the double shield?
Andre. If I ever get to play my own game, I'll roll a character and dual wield shields. That is the one that annoys me the most, I think. Like, it doesn't work that way. No one would do that. There's a reason why you would use an actual weapon in your other hand.
It's not effective the way you think. Unless you're lucky to be able to get the edge of the shield into their neck and like close off their windpipe. You're pretty much just beating them a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not sure how your username is. Maybe her Krabby, but I am terrible at pronouncing things. It is my superpower. So Brian Smith says, I wish gnomes had shields that were like puzzle pieces that are actually interlocked each other like a shield wall, but literally solidly built temporary wall. I think that's an amazing idea, and there is no reason why the gnomes in your world do not do that. It seems like a thing to do, especially like the gnomes from now Mount Nevermind in Dragonlance. Like they fit together, and they turn something, and there's gears and cogs that turn, and then literally they just all lock. I think that's an amazing idea.
Yeah, I do as well. I think that that should absolutely be a thing.
Yeah. Uh, Brian also Brian Smith talking to somebody else. Animated shield is a dope idea. Dancing and singing swords, nah. Singing and dancing shields. Why not both? A dancing sword and animated shield. And then in the meantime, you just pull out your longbow or crossbow from behind the sword and shield.
Yeah, that would be pretty badass if you ask me.
Yeah, the animated shield in D&D is a very cool item, especially if you want to play, that big weapon wielder,
Right.
and still have the shield doing its thing.
Now, after I had kind of proposed this topic, you know, shields, have that iconic, super defense scenario, but is more than just an item type. It's more than just, your defense. You have shield golems, which I think are super awesome, to be able to be used in a number of different ways, as well as, and this is the thing that I might do for the newsletter when it comes out on shields, is I started having this concept for what I'm referring to as the Armory Golem. And at its design, it looks like a very frail construct, but it's designed by, or not designed, but it's made by wizards, mages, and it's meant to carry essentially all the swords and shields of a legion, of a unit, to battle. So then just before they go to fight, the unit can go and retrieve their armament from this thing, and it's got the ability to kind of like imbue it with magic for a time. But if you happen to be trying to ambush, this thing could actually do a bit of damage, because it's entirely layered in shields and weaponry. So like even if you get close, you're just going to stab yourself, and you're attacking shields that are meant to deflect attacks anyway.
So real quick, Brian Smith, I expect to see that on your Instagram when you draw the gnome interlocking puzzle shields. So very cool. And even cooler, right? Like I feel like some of the gnomes have like steps built into their armor, so that another gnome can kind of run up their back and then plant a shield on top of their shield and lock from the top.
Wow, that would be absolutely crazy. I was like, okay, now we've got this, staggering, what's the thing, the parapets, like
The crenellations on a castle.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how effective it is if all your shields are literally locked together. like it stops them from attacking you, but I don't think you can attack them either.
I mean, you could,
but they're gnomes. Like they might have like spike traps or something on that shoot out of their shields.
You've got the capacity for lob weapons, whether you're gonna throw out bags of entanglement, alchemist fire, that kind of stuff. Like you don't really need to see if you just create a huge hazard in front of them. And since they are kind of the ones who tinker and craft and make stuff, like that's like, okay, they're locked in, so we can't see them to even target them. And then in order to get to them to try and knock down their shield aspect, you've got to get through this massive swath of just inhospitable terrain.
Well, also I imagine, right, like the bottom ranks just lean on the wall that they've kind of planted in the ground, and the upper ranks. Like I'm just seeing these like grooves for feet that make like little footholds.
Sure,
So like the top gnomes could be maybe like attacking with crossbows or long spears from over top of the second shield.
sure.
You could also have your lobbers as well, fouling up everybody in the front, making it even more effective. So Don Incognito, Mex and D&D. I think we did that video not that long ago.
Yeah, we absolutely did say, hey, how do we make this happen?
So it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, before you know it, they set up a workshop behind the bulwark.
Yeah. Gnomes,
They don't
don't
worry
mess with
about us. We're
gnomes.
good.
Don't mess with gnomes. You just don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I think gnomes are awesome. They don't quite get as much love as they should, but those that truly understand and love them, will love them forever.
Well, I mean, especially if like you go back to second edition Dragonlance and Tinker Gnomes.
Sure.
They were actually much different. With Dragonlance, they did a pretty good job of creating, the gnomes and making them feel different than other worlds. Because prior to that, they're like every description was kind of like, well, they're kind of like a dwarf. So, as a matter of fact, like I don't know who said it, but like I'll be a bearded gnome. I don't know if that was a Flint from Dragonlance or if that was someone else, or even maybe even Brunar. But I feel like that was like a fairly common dwarven curse back in those days. But we're going back a ways. You had mentioned the shield golem, and when you like mentioned, talking about shields, my mind
Hmm.
instantly went there. It's like one of the best bodyguard type
Hmm.
monsters.
Yeah, I think, and it's low enough CR that it can be a challenge by itself, but it's also decent enough at a CR7, as I just happened to pull it up, that like this could be paired with a caster or something else, and really make that so much more of a difficult make the encounter much more difficult because this thing is in the way.
Yeah, or paired up with a elder brain, undead elder brain.
Yeah. If you pair it up with such a thing, it is entirely possible that you can make something astronomical.
Yeah, who would do such a diabolical thing? And surprisingly, like we've got all kinds of animated things. We do not have an animated shield as a monster.
Because like, how are we supposed to take down a shield? A shield.
I mean, there's armor, there's a knife, there's a halberd.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
There's a chained library, a whole library. Oh, I think it's like a. I think it's like a. I think it's like a shelf. It's like an animated bookshelf. But that even kind of going with your idea of the golem,
Hmm.
like having an armory where everything is animated would be interesting and annoying. I feel like.
Well, like I hadn't fully pictured whether this thing is a quadruped or a bipedal, but like the idea was like it would just be able to transport stuff, but have enough construct power that, dude, if it needs to fight, it can fight, and if they're caught unaware, like this thing could just kind of like step in, and because it's a construct, most armies are not going to be equipped with magical abilities, and therefore like this thing would shrug off attacks, whether it be completely immune to non-magical weapons or just resistant to. That's usually enough to give it an edge. um, So I just, thought it was a different take on a construct, and really have it, it's like it's designed for warfare more than it is for just a straight up, oh, it's a construct that's meant to go out and kill or defend. Um, so maybe it's crafted for worlds that have seen so much war, and just the cost of moving that much metal, to and from, can be prohibitive. Whereas a one-time cost of making this construct, it's got the ability to take it there, and then once you arm the people off of it, they're better prepared because their gear is enhanced for a short time.
So does it just show up and then like fall into a pile of gear?
It wouldn't fall into a pile of gear, but like I imagine it has like this like very thin skeleton of like connections and hooks, so that it can like latch on to the hilts or the handles of shields, so that it's basically just shields with swords and things just sticking out of it. um so like if you go to fight it in melee, like you're gonna get stabbed just by being close. So like it would have
Or
that.
it can hook your weapons and shield and gear
Sure.
and put it on the rack.
That would be that would be awesome ability as well.
Like a recharge ability where it can just summon mundane weapons and shields to it. I mean, you
I
could
like
say
that.
armor as well, but I think the person would be attached to the armor. Like it would grab them too, like almost like a magnet effect or a magneto effect.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't look at it as more of like, even though I called it an armory golem,
Yeah,
I didn't think it had to do with armor, but more armaments.
yeah, yeah. Um, so Andre says the problem with shields is passive defense system, like D20 is you cannot really do much with it. If you have an active system, you can add combat stances specifically designed for shields. Yeah, and there's games that do that kind of stuff, and I think stuff like that really slows down combat when it's like someone does an attack move, then you do a defense move, and
And
it's very clunky. And
if you're looking for like super narrative but super tactical, realistic style combat, then yeah, that's absolutely a direction that you can go. I don't have a whole lot of experience with Shield. Um, I've done more Buckler, which absolutely is a vastly different style of fighting. A lot of times when people think shields, they think, okay, I'm going to slap this thing on my wrist, hold it in my hand, and I'm going to block the greater percentage of my torso with this thing, or it's a freaking tower shield and like it literally will block everything. Where a buckler is, you're talking about something like this, it can't handle like just a straight up attack. It's meant for deflections and parries to divert the energy, not stop it cold. And
yeah,
like when you get into that kind of tactical back and forth, like yeah, the weapons that you're using versus the weapons that your opponent is using absolutely freaking matter.
yeah, I'm just not into simulationist style games, right? Like I care more about the narrative
Mm-hmm.
and playing. Even Mutants and Masterminds was very much like a there wasn't hit points, but you had to make a toughness roll, so it was kind of an extra step that could make things take longer as well.
Right.
So while passive armor class systems are kind of imperfect, I do kind of prefer them because it's a little bit more streamlined. You
Right. The combat is there to offer the challenge and to put the threat of possible death on the table, but at the same time, we've kind of come to the point where the story, the social, all of that stuff is more enjoyable, and that's the hours that we want to spend rather than the hours of nitty gritty. Can we measure distances and narrate every little aspect of a combat?
Yeah, I mean it's a trade-off too, and it just depends what you enjoy from the experience.
100%.
So a game like Morkborg or Vast Grim, they have an armor class system that your agility gets attacked, and then if you or no, it's not your agility gets attacked. You make an agility defense roll, and if you fail it, you get hit. And then if you get hit, damage is rolled, and then depending on your armor, you would roll basically to soak the damage.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess that's kind of similar. I mean, you could speed it up a little bit by always rolling your agility and your armor together. And then depending, like, I don't remember if Brian had us roll our own damage against ourselves or if he rolled it when I played Vast Grim or not, But again, you could always roll all the dice at once to speed that up a little bit. And it's not that it's going to give you that much more in depth, but it is another way to do armor that is not just a passive armor class system.
Sure. So Brian's got a question that I was actually, had loaded in my queue of things to say is, what about the spell shield? Can we make that cooler? My thought pattern was, it's already a great spell at level 1. Anyone who is looking to just like, hey, I need to add 5 to my AC for the round. At every level of the game, a +5 to your AC is nice, because that when you go to cast it, you usually have the number that they're hitting, so it's either going to help you out or not. So you don't, it's not like I have to hope that it's going to be helpful. So what
Or
are
if
your
someone casts a
thoughts?
magic missile at you. Yeah, so like mechanically it's already a really great spell, but the question is, can you make it cooler? So you can always describe it differently, right? There's that, like in our games, generally it doesn't change the effect, but how whatever if you made a character that is dubbed the slap mage, and you want to block the incoming attacks by force hands appearing and slapping them out of the way, our table wouldn't be opposed to that.
Right. Now, my thought pattern was, you know, how high of a level and what kind of bonus, if you were like, shield doesn't have a if you cast it at a higher level,
No.
but do you think a higher level version or an improvement upon that is something that would would be able to be done and not break the game?
Not really. I mean, if I was going to see something go anywheres, I think I would probably prefer it to be like an improved mage armor. They had in previous editions. There was a greater mage armor, and then with an upcast to increase your armor class, I'd feel better with that. But like shield is already really good. It lasts around, adds 5 to your armor class. Like, where do you go from that? Like 10, like 15?
Well, so that's the thing. I mean, like a third or fourth level spell, in my opinion, that gave you 10 for the full round,
Yeah.
and maybe something else, resistance to magic damage, anything that would fall into a spell,
I feel like the problem with tweaks the shield is whatever you do will either feel like too much or not enough.
Okay,
Nothing feels perfect to me, right? Like,
sure,
if you're like, well, for every level you upcast to increase the armor class by 1. At a certain point it's like, oh, well, that doesn't feel worth it at all. And also you
right,
don't know. But, increasing it by a significant amount will then feel like it's too good. Right? Cuz
right,
5 is already a lot. There is very little in the game that you can do that can give you that much assistance to something immediately.
Sure.
So that's why I don't know. I think shield is kind of perfect the way it is.
Okay. I mean, I did not feel the need to have to create a new spell, but if shield is the topic, I figured that would be something to certainly bring up and be able to say, like, what kind of discussion can you have? And Brian threw it up in the chat, so I'm like, well, I might as well broach the subject now while
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
super relevant.
Blame Brian. I agree.
Not blame. Like I said, I had it already on my
We love
queue to
Brian.
talk.
Brian is here like all the time. Like if an attack hits, it misses instead. Cause what is the new one? Is it Silvery Barbs that people are like very divided on? Is that the one that
I,
causes advantage and
Silver bar.
disadvantage?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I have it in your game,
Yeah.
the dome.
Remind me how Cipher System treats shields. So there's armor. And armor just absorbs damage.
Yep.
I don't know if there are shields in Cipher System or what they do.
Well, you know what? I'll look it up while we.
I have not had a character that uses a shield in Cipher System.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I have either.
And also like in Cipher System, when you're being attacked, you're rolling to defend against it because the GM doesn't roll any dice. So there's not like a static AC per se. I could see adding an asset maybe in Cipher System that's how my gut says it would be handled. Which an asset in Cipher System means it just brings the difficulty of the challenge down by 1.
So, well, technically, an asset does not bring. I don't think it brings the target number down. It gives you a bonus to your roll. So, like if you were doing a difficulty 5 and you had an asset as opposed to a 15, you need a 14.
Yeah.
As opposed to lowering the difficulty would bring it down to a 12. So there's no equipment in Cipher System. You have your weapons and your powers. So the only thing I was able to find is the armor. So like you could count, oh, my shield is light armor.
Mm-hmm.
If you really wanted to.
That's how I think it would be handled. In there, like it was probably just fall under the light armor, which reduces the damage by like 1 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cipher System's weird like that. And I know what you're talking to because like there's assets right in Cipher System, and the asset decreases the difficulty by 1. You can have a maximum of 2 assets involved when you make the roll. But there's another thing that actually gives a bonus of +1 or +2, and it very rarely ever comes up, but it's a thing in the game.
Right. So it's weird. So
it is. I really like Cipher System, but it is the most generic, very specific system I've ever played. is how I would describe it. It's like generic in the sense you can do anything with it, but it's very oddly specific when you're like building your character and your powers and abilities and stuff.
So I love Cipher System. I've loved all the games that I've played, with it. But the fact that you don't get anything that's like a permanent item.
They have them. They are in the game. They're called artifacts.
Right, and we technically have the artifacts in the Nobody's Heroes of we can communicate with each other, through our earbuds. But like I've said it, a bajillion times, here on the channel. I love magic items, and even though fifth edition definitely has gone in a divergent path with magic items, that it's more about what the character can do than what items they have. Whereas third edition, it really required you to have all your spaces, filled up with stuff in order to be able to survive the challenges that are out there. There's still a part of me that harkens and loves that aspect. Um, so I'm like, I want to make stuff, but with Cypher, it's not really there. So I'm like, this is why I'll always love D&D.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like baked into your DNA after a certain point. You're just used to that type of game.
Well, I mean, I was, doing the math. I mean, I've been playing this game for 31 years. It's a long time.
It is a little while. It is a little while. So you had mentioned you don't really like Shield and Sword and Board characters, but I think I played quite a few of them.
I didn't say I don't like them. I mean, I've played just about everything. I mean, for the longest time I was fascinated by the two weapon fighting.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've done two-handed weapons. I've done a sword and board style scenario. I just meant like when I've fought, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it.
Oh, you meant out of game.
I mean, yeah. I mean, when I was actually training.
You need to go to one of them Viking schools.
Well, I mean, supposedly, Arma is back together and I'm fighting again. But not going as often as I would like.
So does Arma not cover, using a shield that much, or is it just your group hasn't done that?
So our group many years ago, I taught sword and buckler.
Yeah.
But as far as like straight up shield, no, we have not covered it. I don't know whether that's within the Arma way or not. We did spear, which you could kind of say polearm falls in the same mentality. We did dagger. We did, sword and buckler. We went and took a couple of classes of rapier with another study group down at the shore. We've done, the long sword, which is essentially a hand and a half bastard sword. The majority of what we've done has been, the German longsword. So, but picking up a round shield is not something that we've done. Like, I think we've made a couple, and we had to try out, but it's a lot harder because it's absolutely a very different fighting style, and usually. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks out there, either in the chat or the comments, but like I've seen more like round shields for either competitions or for like legitimate warfare than like the stuff that we're doing. So I don't know.
Yeah, and like they have different, like the different versions. There's the one where you literally strap it on your arm, and then I think the Viking round shield is just like a handle, like a dowel, like in the center that they use, and they move it around a lot.
The dowel in the center, allows you to do more deflections and more like counter maneuvers. So like if I've got the ability to actually orient my shield, I can essentially treat it like a fist and straight up punch you with it. Whereas like if I'm strapping it to my arm, like I can shove you with it or I could backhand you with it, but it requires far more lead time to do those kind of things than it would be for if I've just got it in my hand, because it's just like my full momentum, to go behind it. But I can also I can bash away at multiple angles with just my wrist, your weapon to really get a parry, or kind of reverse if you're stronger than your opponent if they try and hook your shield, you can kind of pull back and try to disarm them when they're trying to knock your shield out of the way. So you wind up getting extra defensive by pulling your shield in, and you can strip them of their weapon.
So Douglas Cole, I think the name of his company is Ballistic Gaming or Gaming
Okay.
Ballistic, one or the other. Um, and he makes some RPG products and stuff, but also he makes for a while he also builds Viking shields
Okay.
and I think like a place he said there was a place he found a place near him that actually where it's like Arma but Viking fighting style instead.
Nice.
So yeah, you just need to find one of those places.
Well, with my already precious limited time,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I ran into my old Arma buddy the day before Halloween, and I've managed to get out to Arma in it's now 4 months, 2 or 3 times. So,
Boom. You'll be a
like I said,
sword wielding killing machine in no time.
just give it another 6 or 7 years at that rate, right?
Yeah. I just have to hire ninjas to attack you randomly. This way
Well,
you have a choice but to train.
I imagine if you take the time to hire ninjas, they're going to report back. Uh, Here's your money back. He was too easy.
I think you should give yourself more credit.
Well, they're either crappy ninjas or I'm just a goner because I don't walk around in armor and weapons.
Yeah.
And I was kind of joking around with the family today as I yawned and like, oh, Daddy, are you tired? And I'm like, that's my secret. I'm always tired.
Nice. Yeah. So I was thinking about this topic, and one of the first things that I kind of think about when I think about shields and how to kind of like use them and have some significance in your game is like oftentimes that's where the heraldry will be
Hmm.
displayed is on a shield or the emblem of someone's faith is on a shield. So it's almost like a giant calling card of I am from this family or my allegiance is to X or I worship this god. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
So I was hoping that you would kind of go in that direction. And as you began talking, like I almost pictured word for word what you were going to say, and like that could be a great place to put in some lore. Ways to either put up history or religion, in what would not normally be that type of a place, and it could, for the characters who really know, it could foreshadow that this could be a possible villain, or at least maybe not villain but antagonist in the future, depending upon how the party is set up. um, you know but to get extra information in your world of like, oh well, this particular shield has been somewhere, has done something, or belongs to a family or a person of the faith, like those kind of things are great for just inserting little nuggets that you want to get out there.
I mean, that is the cool thing about paladins and clerics as well. They can use their casting focus and put it on their shield,
Hmm.
which frees them up to not having to hold it,
Right.
which can be kind of nice. But also, like even from the role playing stance, like you said, if someone has knowledge, history, or religion, I might say, that this is such, and then if they give me a check and depending on the role, I might give them additional information based on that, and be like, oh, those are the Templars of blah blah blah, and they're renowned for being badasses, and they will always fight to the death. No one has ever taken one alive, or whatever, whatever history or lore you want to put behind it. But it is a cool way to sneak in some RP and world building. And like as GMs, I feel like we should always be looking for those moments where we can sneak in some of our world building and lore without doing an info dump on the characters and have it mean something, have it become something that's meaningful for them instead of like, we've both played in games where like the GM is like, I have this rich world that I've been building for decades and now I will dump it all upon you. and you're just like, dude, this is a one shot. I don't actually care. Yeah, and like, but like if you can put it in a way that's meaningful to your character that you're
Mm,
playing, and be like, oh, this thing, and the reason why you would know it, and why it would might be something your character understands, especially too if it's like maybe it's the cleric or the wizard knows the information, but it's actually pertinent to the warriors in the group more
right.
so, right? So like it lets everyone kind of feel like
Connected.
they're taking part.
I like it when I mean, with our world back in the day when we had all of our religion fully fleshed out and what have you, like we had, oh well, this is the relationship between this god and all of the others. You knew who their allies were, you knew who their enemies were, you knew that, oh, during this particular time frame these two who didn't normally work together did, and it resulted in this new being over here. So like, those kinds of things can be a lot of fun. And even though it's only campaign 4 for 5th edition, I decided like I really wanted to kind of go back to the roots and kind of reevaluate religion and kind of
Yeah.
put that back into my game. Um,
Yeah, you
so
definitely pulled some of that out in a really cool and meaningful way in our first session of your We Live on a Boat. That
mhm.
did you like remake that stuff up, or did you find it?
So I found, it might even be like right here, but I found like 7 of like the 30 pages that had uh, the deity information, and I began putting it in. Like I'll not began. It's all loaded into a Google Doc
Yeah.
for the religions. I've added in the. Well, let's go look that up.
Now you gotta be curious. Now we're going off on a tangent.
It's all right. All right. So
And also we also had our next session of Shadow of the Demon Lord too, which that was pretty cool. I died.
yes. So
Spoilers.
we technically got to finish session 0
Yeah.
and kind of do our session 1 as
Well, we
our
did
0th
like
level.
session 0, session half, and then we did like the other half of what would be that session. So it kind of worked out. I mean, we also had we didn't have a lot, like we had a short window to play in anyway.
Sure.
So that kind of worked out pretty well. But so far I'm enjoying that. Let's see, we got a question here from Chris. So how many shield types should a 5e have? 4? Buckler, small, medium, tower. Uh that was the Baldur's Gate video game system shield categories. That was the 3rd edition as well.
Yeah. So like I'm happy with it just being shield.
Shield.
Um, you know, and how you use is how you use it. Anyone who wants to say like I'm gonna go adventuring with a tower shield, I think you're crazy. Like that's not what those things are designed for.
You're just like dragging around the piece of wall, right?
Yeah. So I know there's going to be more, but the Divergent, we've got Gaius Quenthel and No Way, or the Beggar King, as kind of like the um, the new gods.
Mm.
And then we've got the 30, which I don't even know if I have them all here, but Kredgfer, Malus Destria.
That's why I was just curious, like how many of them you thought, like how many you had names for.
Yeah, for the new ones, I've just got those 3. Um, but I mean, I've got write-ups for, a whole bunch. Um, like there's not much on Jolivia and Bolise, even though like I freaking I had a character who worshipped her for years. Um, so we actually have some more down here from this might have been from Ryan's other game, but we've got the Harbinger, we've got Marathiel, Halum, Thruck and Thurser, we've got Gilda,
Yeah, none of those are ringing any bells. That's all made up
Yes,
stuff to me.
and we've got
Like any of
Sela.
it's not.
Yeah. um, so like my idea, like we had a very closed off world in when we played way back when, and we had all of this stuff figured out. Um, but like the way we're playing now is it's kind of the opposite. It's far more open. So I'm while this is not going to be like heavily a deity focused game, you're on the water, so Maltritus is going to be involved. uh, and there's several other hands that will absolutely be out there as well. So it's like, all right, I'm going to have some fun with it and allow people to kind of explore as much or as little as they want, with the deities. And wherever crossover happens, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having fun with that game so far, and I really love the stuff that kind of organically came out of it with Pratima figuring out things with her character and the gods and deities that
Yeah,
like just fit very nicely.
the previous write up on Maltritus, I had already had it. So I literally just was like, I'm going to copy this from my doc and I'll send it to you so that you can choose to interact. This, she's not a priest, she's a paladin, so she doesn't have to follow those strict guidelines. She's got her own oath to work with, but it was a scenario of, hey, do with as you will. But getting back to Shadow of the Demon Lord, like to tie in with shields, we actually had a shield that went from my character to your character to another character over the course of a single adventure. Because
I think it went back to my character.
Did it go back to?
Or did it go back to my new character, or did it go to James? One of them.
I don't know. One of you has it. But so as a 0th level character, yes, in Shadow of the Demon Lord, you just play your ancestry before you get your level in a class. We had a very brutal session. My character was not strong enough to use the shield that he had, so I passed it off to Dave's character. And once James and Dave both died, we wound up taking what we could.
You almost got TPK'd by a werepossum.
By a werepossum. Yep, you heard that correct.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had some bad dice rolls. Otherwise, I think my tactics and my plan was sound.
Well, kind of after the game, we were like kind of talking, and like even though there was a bit of like a meta game in my question, I'm like, is he narrating that this is beyond us, or is he just being flavorful? Like he's like, yeah, you picked up on that. I was trying to let you know that this thing was beyond you.
Yeah, I saw the dice he was rolling. I instantly knew it was beyond us. But I was like, with creativity, perhaps we could prevail.
So he was rolling well, and he was rolling with 2 boons.
Yeah, so Shadow the Demon Lord is a D20 system. And it's got a boon and bane that goes with it. So boons are good, banes are bad. And a boon is just rolling an additional D6. And you may have multiple boons or multiple banes, and you just take the best or worst one depending on what you're rolling.
Right.
And so a D20 plus modifier plus plus a boon, and he was rolling 2 dice. So I knew it was way out of our league. And then I also saw the damage that it did to one of the characters. So
and yet you still said, I'm gonna attack that sucker.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know if it was gonna run us down.
Well,
if it did run us down, I think of all of our characters, mine would be the safest.
Yeah, so let's put yourself in harm's way and let your head
I feel like it's
off.
what my character would have done, man.
Well,
he was a guard, his name was Guard, and he was constructed just for that purpose.
All right, and he got his head ripped off, and
he did get his head ripped off, his poor little clockwork head. and now one of the other characters is wielding his arm because his arm had a sword grafted to it. So he's wielding his arm as a weapon.
The dynamic of that particular party
Yeah.
just did such a wild swing. Uh, like I was sitting next to James, and he went from this like I want to be a ghoul. I'm like this nasty. I eat corpses in a minute.
He
You
was
know,
playing a ghoul. That's
yeah, a
his ancestry was.
loose ally. You know, because I wouldn't call him friend because like he was fully into the cult that my character was kind of a part of. But like I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid, whereas he did. So it was like, well, you know, we're working together. This is how it goes. Probably going to have to put you down at some point in time. To now he's playing this dude who I've just spent the last session and a half pretty much insulting and saying like this dude's going to eat you. And like I have to try and wrap my head around, well, how do I consider this dude an ally now?
Well, you know, the N fell off. Now he's an ally. Brian Smith, I think some races would never use a shield like a Goliath, like it's a sign of weakness or something. Well, so there's this great series of books. I believe there was, I don't know if there was 6 or 9 called, so The Last of the Renshai was the first trilogy. And
Yep.
it was the Renshai were a tribe of Norsemen that believed shields and armor were for those that were too lazy or too cowardly to get out of the way. Something along those lines. They only
Yes,
fought with swords, pretty much.
Mickey
And
Zucker Reichert is the
uh,
name. They are absolutely fantastic. A number of really, really great characters and character development. Uh, if you're in the novels and you're in the sword play, highly recommend you check out her work.
yes, and like all the books had like a quote in the beginning of each chapter, and they were all like fantastic. Like one of my favorites was when diplomacy and tact fail, there's always violence. I wish I wish there was a place where just the quotes existed and lived, but there is not, alas. I think I even tried to reach out to the author and be like, "Hey, is there any way to just get all the quotes?
There is. It's called
Go read
go.
all of my books." I'm like, "I did read them. I just don't want to go through and pick them all out." Where's intern Jake when you need him? That would have been a great intern job.
Yeah, I know this isn't helpful for D&D, but it's helpful to me. Do it.
Do it. Trust me, I got a plan. Yeah.
So
Do we have anything we need to go over? Because you got a minute to do it.
yeah, no, we're you know we're in the last Monday of the month. So next week we're gonna announce the next giveaway. The next set of stuff that we'll head out your way. To some lucky fan will announce the fan game. I believe it's my turn to run this time. So you know I might even get ahead of the game and get those things mailed out tomorrow or emailed out tomorrow, and then just announce it next Wednesday or next Monday. Dear God, I can't talk. So we'll see what happens. But we'll be able to read it next week. It'll be Doug and myself coming on to chat about who knows what. We'll figure that out in the nearest future. We know we got Nobody's Heroes tomorrow night. We
That's
got
true.
Dave, hopefully will be back Friday with another live chat.
I will be back Friday with another live chat. Brian Gray will be coming on to hang out and talk about D&D and gaming. And they co-DM a game with Eugenio, one of my favorite GMs and people. So
Cool.
it should be a blast to chat. So come hang out with us. But with that, it's that time. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.